Is there anything to this?
You are never going to know.
You see, the idea is not to applaud non-answers.
I might use that
No,
one
but
later.
here's what fascinates me about this story. You, after how many years, agreed to go and see him?
What do you mean, go and see him?
Well, he asked you to come and see him in Ireland, did he not?
Oh, that was another man.
Oh.
That was 27 years.
27 years.
That's right.
You had it. You thought about him for 27 years.
That's right.
And when you thought about him, the thoughts were romantic and probably sometimes.
Yes, they were.
And after 27 years, you actually, in reality, saw him. You flew to Ireland. This sounds like a great story.
It certainly does.
And how long did the reunion last?
3 days, and I took the plane back to France.
The fantasy is not the reality. Is that the moral of that story?
Well, the reality was just not quite what I expected. It was not the drama that I wanted to play any role in. It turned out. It's too bad, isn't it? So there we are. But anyhow, I'm happy. Everything's all right.
Well, I guarantee you, no one's going to worry about you. Let me just see. Can we see that color shot of Olivia one more time, David? Let's show Olivia in Gone with the Wind. 8311, whichever one you want. Doesn't matter. When we push our buttons here.
That was Santa Fe Trail.
Oh.
That was not Gone with the Wind.
All right. Do we have a shot with Olivia and...
No, that was the ambassador's daughter.
I'm going to... 8318, David. Watch what happens here. Watch how fast we can work this. I don't think you... Vivian Leigh happens to be in this show. There you go.
There's Melanie. There she is.
Now steps... You know, it makes me wonder, you also came from a family that was interested in the arts, and you tell us you were born in a small town in California.
I was not.
I'm sorry, you were raised in...
Yes, I was,
California.
and I know about this attitude.
My goodness, you scared me to death.
Well, I was born in Tokyo, Japan, but it's true. I was brought up in Saratoga, 50 miles south of San Francisco, and I know very well that attitude. Anybody from San Francisco, well, Los Angeles.
Yeah, Los Angeles. It has no culture.
Oh.
Well, that's the way we do it here. We have imaginary lines separating us. Here's my question. If you both were encouraged to the visual arts, it makes me wonder if if we take all our kids and place them at the right moment at age 3 or 4 on a stage in front of a lot of people, and have them stand there, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder, they're bit. They're smitten with theater for the rest of their lives. And I'm not sure that's a bad thing.
Well, what was Amy's first experience?
My first experience was playing the baby in Rumpelstiltskin. I was 9 months old, and my mother played the miller's daughter, the mother. My father was Rumpelstiltskin. And I don't remember a lot about that experience.
You played Midsummer Night's Dream with Mickey Rooney as Puck.
I did. Mm-hmm.
That tops that last one.
No, but before that, in amateur theatricals, because we had a very, yours was an amateur theatrical, but we had in Saratoga a very active community players group. And I first played Alice in Wonderland for that group, and then Midsummer Night's Dream, actually, in what we called the Theater of the Glade. And it was in a redwood grove by the village stream. It was really simply enchanting. And, well, anyway, that was my experience outside in school plays and that kind of thing, too.
I must share with this audience, this is fun. I apologize for the fact that with all of the legal claims on this film, we are not permitted, we're only permitted to legally show you a very small part of what is arguably the greatest film of all time. Here is our guest, Olivia de Havilland. as Melanie, as she and Ashley meet you-know-who after, I think you saw him that afternoon, perhaps kissing Scarlett in the barn, or I'll let you see this film clip. Roll the film. Gone with the Wind.
What a lovely dress, Scarlett, darling. India wasn't able to come tonight. Will you be an angel? I do need you to help me receive my gifts. It's me. Here's our darling Scarlett.
You must have known that was going to be wonderful when you were doing it. You knew that was going to be blockbuster when you were making
The film?
it. Yes.
Yes, I had a feeling it was going to have a great future.
Let me say to those of you who might be going nuts trying to remember, Miss de Havilland won the Oscar for starring roles in To Each His Own and The Heiress. And now she stars with Amy Irving and Anastasia. We're with both Amy Irving and Olivia de Havilland in New York City, and we'll be back in just a moment. That's Max, who, if he had his choice, would have his picture taken right side up.
Okay, I have a quick question for Olivia. I'm just curious what you think about the controversy concerning adding color to older pictures.
It kind of upsets me, but that's sort of unfair because I haven't seen the results. But a lot of films are really more effective in black and white. The subject, it's a wonderful medium, black and white, and it's very suitable to certain subjects.
I wanted to know, was the original filming of Gone with the Wind in black and white?
No, that was in glorious Technicolor.
Is the caller there? Hi.
Yes, hi. I have a question for Miss de Havilland.
Yes.
I'd like to know, what was it like working with my screen idol, Clark Gable? Also, how does he measure up to today's male screen idols?
What was it like?
How does he measure to today's screen idols? Clark Gable. She's...
Well, it was wonderful working with Clark Gable. He was the king, and he was very professional, and I was very much in awe of him, generally speaking. I haven't worked recently with any of today's screen idols, but I'm eager to start.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Miss de Havilland, I admired your southern drawl, and I wondered if you can still do that.
I can. I can.
You can.
Where do you come from? Which state?
North Carolina.
North Carolina, beautiful state.
Does Amy Irving feel that Barbra Streisand was politically ostracized by the Hollywood community for her failure to be nominated for an Oscar for either making or starring in Yentl?
Yes. I think that she deserved better. I think she's an extremely gifted director, extremely gifted. And she deserved that local pat on the back, but, you know, a lot of people don't get them in that business.
Does Miss Irving feel the same about her husband's failure to win an Oscar for The Color Purple? Or what some may see as the almost a very distracting and obvious attempt not to reward it for the controversy that it generated, for the wonderful criticism that it received. I mean, criticism in the positive sense. It was really a very, very important, historically it was an important film, and your husband, it was shut out.
I believe just about everything Stephen's ever made deserves an Oscar, so I'm probably an unbiased opinion over here as far as discussing it. I try not to delve into why it happened. There's a part of that town that we just choose not to participate in.
Well, ain't that a shame? I mean, here you are, two very talented people, and you don't feel, if I'm understanding you, that you're a member of the community in which you certainly, I think you would agree, your husband is certainly, has to be considered contemporary royalty in this industry. And you're not happy there. And let me just speak for myself. I would begin to think that people don't like me, and I'm just insecure enough to be bothered by that.
Well, we're just insecure enough to have our feelings hurt now and then, but we do keep our heads on straight, and our perspectives are the most important thing is our family, and we have such a amazingly lucky and wonderful life in that area that if there's certain things we don't get to have, that's just life.
Those certain things are the recognition of your own peers. I guess I want to know how you're happy in that environment. It'd be like living in a house where nobody likes you, or where you feel unwelcome.
I don't think that, I think both Stephen and myself do get the recognitions of our peers. If it's not indicated by a gold statue, that's all.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering how long it took to make the movie Gone with the Wind and where it was filmed.
It was filmed in Culver City, California, on the David Selznick lot, Selznick International lot, and it took 6 months to film.
You looked up to discover your name below the title after having done a number of very successful films. And you knew at that time that you were destined then to do some very bad pictures and some very unattractive roles. And that's when you actually walked away from your contract with Jack Warner. That must have took enormous courage at that time. Was this 1950-something, early 50s?
Oh, aren't you nice to think that? No, it was in the early 40s.
Early 40s.
Yes. Well, I did have rather a shock. I was sort of a mini star when I made Gone with the Wind, and I was co-starred with Errol Flynn, and I was starred in Gone with the Wind with Leslie Howard, Vivian Leigh, and Clark Gable. And I came back to the Warner's lot, and I was immediately assigned Elizabeth in Essex with Errol Flynn, and Betty Davis, whom I admire very deeply, as everybody knows. And by golly, if Jack Warner didn't drop my name below the title. And that was a very serious thing in those days. It may still be a very serious thing. You lose standing, and it can be very harmful to a career. Well, I went ahead and made another film, which I wasn't happy about doing, and then finally was assigned a film that I knew would be extremely destructive to my career, and I took what they call a suspension, and that was a very serious thing to do in those days. If you refused to play a part, the studio would suspend you naturally without pay, and you couldn't go anywhere else or earn any money at anything. And then they would add the time that it took another actress to play that role to the end of your contract. So if you took a number of suspensions to protect your value, actually, to the studio, well, that's part of what you were doing, you would end up at the end of the legal term of the contract, say it was 7 years, with 6 months or a year more of accumulated suspensions to serve. And it was when I came to the end of the 7-year contract, had worked 3 months beyond that, making up suspension time, found myself on suspension yet again, that I went to court.
And won.
Yes. Isn't it nice?
You went to court. You're the Kurt Flood of the movie industry. You really were owned, not unlike baseball players before free agency.
It was very much.
It was a slave situation.
Well, I think there were many good things about the contract system, but there were abuses of the system. And what I was the victim of was an abuse of that system. And when a lawyer came to me and he said, you know, I think under California law, there is a limitation
of 7 years.
Of 7 years. But nobody has dared to go to court and ask for what they call declaratory relief, which is an interpretation of the law as it applies to an actor's contract. Does it mean 7 calendar years, or does it mean 7 years of actual work? And what it meant, 7 calendar years.
But I'm surprised that in the early 40s, was there who wanted to hire an uppity woman like you? You had to have a difficult, you had to be thought of as difficult, and in the movie mogul male world of Hollywood, you would think that you might have signed away all your marketability because of that aggressiveness.
Well, yes, but do I look like a pugilist?
Well, obviously it works, so I'm able to ask the question.
Well, I was pretty sure that there would be wonderful parts coming up, and what I wanted was to play complex and interesting women. And sure enough, when I won, To Each His Own came along just like that.
Yeah.
And then came Dark Mirror, which was so difficult to play twins. Then came The Snake Pit. Then came The Heiress. So everything was all right.
Yeah.
Uppity though I was.
There are women today who would kill for those roles. Amy Irving wants complicated parts, like most actresses.
She does.
How many of them are out there?
Not a lot. Not a lot as far as in film and television.
Isn't it interesting that in the 40s, hardly a time of women's lib, we had more interesting roles for women than we do today?
I don't know, was there more focus on the scripts at that time? Also, the studio setup had special writers for special people. It was a lower budget to deal with. Now budgets get so skyrocketed that only a certain amount of films can be made a year, and of those films, how many are going to, how much choice is there?
We are in New York City with Olivia de Havilland and Amy Irving, and we'll be back in a moment.
Might try to...
Can I show that picture, David? Who do you recognize here? Olivia de Havilland. Look who's on the left. You know the name of the film? Uh-huh. West Point Cadet? No. Uh-huh. Santa Fe Trail. 19-something. Do you know? You remember?
Definitely 1940.
1940.
I don't take any more chances. 1940. And I'm sure you had no idea that you were working with the future President of the United States.
Well, I had no idea. That's quite true. But when you think back on it, he had a lot of qualities that are good for president. And he showed them on that film. He was very concerned about the cast. We worked very late at night, and I'm sorry to say that Errol wasn't on time at night. And
Errol was drinking.
No, he wasn't. He was just late. And, and Ronnie came to me. He said that he had gone to, oh, I should have said the president came to, oh, I said Ronnie. Oh, I didn't mean to be so familiar. But anyway, Mr. Reagan came to me, and Ronald Reagan came to me, and he said, you know, I've been to Errol. If you could only be on time, night shooting, you start shooting the minute it's dark enough. Well, we didn't start shooting until midnight, although we were all there, 9:15. He said, I've been to him and asked him if he can't get there earlier, because then that means that we can all go home earlier. But he said, I have not succeeded. Would you try? You see how interested and caring he was about people. And so I did try. And I've forgotten. I know that Errol said to me, why do you have to put it on a personal basis? Which I thought so, I was so hurt by that. And I figured out, why did he say that to me? I said, I didn't know how else to put it. I wish I could tell you that Errol arrived at 8:30 every night after that, but I thought, why did he say that? And I figured it out. It took me a long time. I think he was jealous of Ronald Reagan. And there is the most, I haven't had a chance to tell the president that because we've discussed the film together one evening at the White House at a wonderful dinner. But he tells a marvelous story, the president, about that film. And here's the making of a president in this story. The whole cast was supposed to line up for a big publicity shot. Ronald Reagan was the second lead, male lead, so his position should have been on the right, in the front row of the cast, the right of Errol Flynn, and so it was for the lineup. Now, when they called us and all the lights were set for the photograph itself, he found his position had been realigned. He was supposed to be in the back row. Now that just over the shoulder of Errol Flynn. But unfortunately, the front row was lined up on the top of a little rise, so that Ronald Reagan was on the back side of the rise, and his face could barely be seen over the shoulder of Errol Flynn. Now, how does Ronald Reagan react? It's very extraordinary. He started to kick earth together like this, with his feet, with nobody watching, and he got enough together so that when the picture was taken, he had 2 feet of earth, and he was towering over Errol Flynn.
Amy, of all the...
That is the miller's daughter, Rumpelstiltskin.
Miss Olivia, have you had much competition with your sister? And by the way, you look beautiful.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you. I'm not going to say that.
No, I don't think she thinks she's had much competition with her sister.
This is directed for Amy Irving. I was wondering if Steven Spielberg has a great imagination in everyday life, and if you have any examples and stories.
Well, if I were to tell you anything, examples, then it could be stolen for the next film. He does have an amazing imagination, and out of the blue, I mean, we could be driving in the car or just waking up from, and a story will pop out, and he'll tell it to me in complete detail, and I feel very fortunate to be the one to be receiving these wonderful imaginative stories. And then, you know, 2 years later, they're a movie.
Yeah, I would like to ask Miss de Havilland, your role in Snakepit, was it hard to do the role?
Yes, it was very hard, but wonderfully rewarding. And I did see every experience in a mental institution that the character undergoes in the film. It was a remarkable, remarkable undertaking. And I'm awfully glad I did it.
We are, too.
Amy, I was wondering, being that you played a cellist in Mickey and Maude and a pianist in the competition, I was wondering if you had had any musical training as you were growing up.
I did have a minimal amount. For about 3 years, I played the piano as a child, and and then in high school, I played the violin.
Yeah. Olivia, have you ever married, and if so, do you have children?
Me?
Yeah.
Have I ever married? Twice. 2 children. 1 from each husband.
Amy, seeing that Ingrid Bergman did Anastasia in the 50s, did you study how she did it, or did you try not to look at it at all?
You know, I've never seen the film, and I chose to wait until this was all over to watch it, just so I wasn't influenced or intimidated.
I wanted to know how you feel about the competition with Helen Hayes and Ingrid Bergman.
The 2 of us.
Yeah.
I don't understand the question.
I asked how you would feel about the competition, that the comparison between comparison between Helen Hayes and Ingrid Bergman.
Oh, well, you know, our film is so very different from that film. I haven't seen it, but I do know that that is more of a fantasy version, and this is more the facts of the woman who did die in 1984, of Anna Anderson. It's much closer to it, and there are very, very, very different films, I believe.
When you play an emotionally demanding role, how do you not bring your work home with you? To get out of a role?
I take a deep breath and take one look at the arms of my little boy running to me, and that movie's out of my head in a second.
Olivia, have you ever written a book, or do you plan to?
I have written a book, and it's called Every Frenchman Has One. And it's not what you think. It's a book of about 20 essays regarding different phases of French life, where I had adventures, comic adventures, adapting to life among the French. But I'll write another.
I want this audience to see you at work in Anastasia, Olivia. Here you are, delivering as always. You are surefire. Who doesn't want this performer in his or her film? Anastasia.
Explain yourself, young man. Why send this nonsense into me? You think I care what people in America are saying? At my age, I don't much care what anybody says. She's a pretty thing. I'll give her that. I take it you're in love with her? What's that to me? Is it supposed to sway my feelings?
No. I have some letters from her. May I read you what she writes about you?
You may not.
Amy, how old is your son, and do you get to spend a great deal of time with him?
What was the first?
How old is your baby?
Max is 16 months, and this trip to promote Anastasia, which keeps me away for 3 nights, is my first time away from him.
Yes.
Was there much competition between Vivian Leigh and Olivia?
Competition between Vivian Leigh?
And you.
No, no.
Boy, when she looked at you in that scene.
Olivia, would you like to see a remake of Gone with the Wind? And if so, who would you like to see play your part?
Well, my daughter looks a lot like me. But actually, I think Gone with the Wind is such a precious film and means so much to people just as it is. Somehow or other it's part of people's lives, and that means 4 or 5 generations of people, because this generation reacts to it just as their great grandparents did, and it would be a pity, I think, to redo it.
I figured that the American Democratic experiment is over when they start showing Gone with the Wind on airplanes. December 7th and 8th, Anastasia appears on NBC starring both Amy Irving and Olivia de Havilland. The caller, who did not get to her question until the middle of the last commercial, wants to know if you ever had to deal with the casting couch. Ahem. Either of you.
I have never seen a casting couch.
Service provided and promotional fees paid by the following.